I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you tuned into our program today, and especially in this hour, for a dialogue with Lisa Rice. Lisa Rice is the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. Many of us believe that housing is a right in this country, or certainly ought to be a right in this country. We'll probe Lisa's take on that in a moment. The Fair Housing Act of 1968 was actually passed in a time of turmoil, conflict, and conflagration in cities all across the nation. Indeed, it took the assassination of Dr. King to finally secure its passage, and yet 55 years after Dr. King's death, various forms of housing discrimination, segregation, and associated consequences persist. Lisa Rice joins us for the hour for a deep dive into how and why housing is getting tougher, not easier, for so many of our fellow citizens in the richest nation in the history of the world. I'm pleased to welcome Lisa Rice to this program. Lisa, how are you today?
Hi, Tavis. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. How are you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am delighted to have you on this program, and I'm glad we've got an hour to unpack some of these thorny issues around the issue of housing. Let me just jump right in and probe, as I said a moment ago, your view, your thoughts on this notion that housing in this country ought to be a right. There are many that believe that. There are many who fight for that every day. And there are others who see it differently. Why should housing be a right? If I got to pay a mortgage, you should have to pay a mortgage, yada, 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 all kind of arguments. But this notion that in the richest nation in the history of the world that housing is not a right is troubling for many of us. I pass the microphone to you.
Tavis, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, in the United States, housing is not considered a human right. It should be, as you've noted. And in fact, the United Nations does consider housing to be a human right. Housing is a necessary, it's a necessary service that people need. It's one of our foundational needs as a human being. Every person needs food. Every person needs air. Every person needs water. And every person needs shelter. So it is a fundamental right. Now, it's interesting, Tavis, that housing and access to housing is sort of foundational. If you look at the history of the United States, one of the things that attracted people to come to this nation and to immigrate to what we now call the United States of America is the promise that people would be able to own a piece of land and to have a home for themselves. So you think about it, many European nations, landlocked, there was no opportunity for wealth creation, no opportunity for them to pass on wealth to successive generations. And one of the promises that the United States held was, or the British government that was encouraging people to come and colonize this space. Right? The holdout, the promise was you can own your own home. And in fact, the British government set up a system called the headright system. It offered 50 to 100 acres of land for every person who came to the United States from Great Britain. And you'd get 50 to 100 acres of land, Tavis, for every person in your household, including slaves. So you see, housing and home ownership land ownership is a part of manifest destiny. Because the head rights system, after the United States was formed as an official government, the head rights system morphed into the Homestead Act system. And we know that, of course, hundreds of millions of acres of land were taken away from Native Americans, from Native peoples. That wealth was transferred to white people, and people of color were not able to access those home ownership and land ownership opportunities. So it's an interesting conundrum.
No, I'm glad you laid out that backstory, that history. I say all the time, I leave this studio every day smarter than when I came in. And even I did not know the backstory you just laid out about what they were promising in the UK. It's a fascinating story to hear. And to use your word, housing in this country at one point was foundational. That's the perfect word. It was foundational. Further to your point, it was a part of manifest destiny. The problem, as you well know, is that for many of us, it has yet to manifest in our destiny. It ain't happened yet. And that's why we're having this conversation about whether or not housing ought to be a right in this country. And when we come forward, I want to ask Lisa point blank, because she agrees with me. You heard her say a moment ago that it ought to be a right, but why isn't it? In the richest nation in the history of the world, particularly given what she just said, that it was foundational, that it was part of manifest destiny. I'm not naive in asking this, but I'll ask it anyway. Why then, in this country, is housing not a right? We'll talk, of course, about the sad burgeoning growth of homelessness or houselessness in this country, and we'll connect that to discrimination in housing. A lot to talk about, but we'll commence when we come forward with this question about why housing is not a right in this country. Our guest is Lisa Rice, the president and CEO of the National for Housing Alliance. You're listening to her right now. We're glad about it on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfected like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat in the Lex since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Deal it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bussin', truckin'. Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450 mile range on a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SCHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I'm here with Lisa Stevens, Senior Business Consultant with Chase for Business. Lisa, what's one tip you'd give to business owners here in the Crenshaw area?
I love that you asked that question. I'm originally from Brooklyn, and I grew up in an area that's very similar to Crenshaw. So this is near and dear to my heart. And if I could only leave a business owner with just one, I would tell the business owner to identify their why. And I think that is so important because your why is going to be that strength on those days where you feel like you're struggling. Your why is going to be that stepping stone. Those days that you want to give up, your why is going to be the reason that you get back up.
And how would you advise business owners looking to acquire capital? What do they need to know before stepping inside the branch to ask for funding?
So 3 things. I do want to share this when it comes to the power of capital and just finding those resources. Understand that capital is a 3-part of a business, right? It's not always about the monetary piece, but if you first put that intellectual, right? What do I need to know? That social, who I need to know, that will help you to then package for that monetary piece. So no matter who you're banking with, you should know your banker. Never walk into a bank and you're transactional only.
It's just like Lisa to drop gems. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
I don't
don't have time for a cold.
Honey.
Honey?
You need DayQuil Severe Honey flavor.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honey-licious taste. Because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe Honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honey-licious. Power through your day, medicine.
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Again, Lisa Rice, I'm grateful for that backstory that you shared with us about the foundational nature of housing in this country. But for you telling us that, it'd be hard to believe it, in part because of the status of housing, or the lack thereof, in our country today for so many of our fellow citizens. But to hear how foundational it was, that it was actually a part of Manifest Destiny, is really arresting in a variety of ways, which we might get a chance to interrogate as we move through this hour. All of that said, why do you believe, given what you said, that it was foundational, that it's a part of Manifest Destiny, that we are in 2023 in the richest nation in the history of the world, and housing is not a human right? It's not a right.
No, it's not a right, and it's really a travesty that it is not. And Tavis, I think quite frankly, the reason it is not is because those with the power to exact policy in our nation really view assets and opportunities from a zero-sum game. That is, right, there are limited assets, there are limited resources, and the people who are more well-heeled in this society want to hoard those assets and hoard those resources. So, and even if you think about it in terms of not just policymakers, but people who already have wealth and already have resources. So think about a neighborhood or a community comprised of single-family homes. Everybody has their own lot, right? They have their yard, their home. One of the ways to increase access to housing opportunity is to allow more affordable housing developments in those kinds of communities. But it becomes actually the people who live in those neighborhoods and communities that themselves oppose the development of affordable housing units in their neighborhoods and their communities. So you see, people think, well, wait a minute, I have this asset. It is my home. It's my source of wealth. If I allow an affordable housing development to come in my community, it's going to impact my individual wealth. Now, that's a misnomer. It's a myth. It's been disproven over and over again, but it's a narrative that has really stuck.
So let me jump in right quick. So I'm a property owner. You're a property owner. Most listen to this program, I suspect right now. Many certainly are property owners. And if there were a development, we're talking now about affordable housing. It could be anything. If there were anything that the city, the county, whoever wanted to develop in my neighborhood, and I thought it was going to lower my property value, I might have a legitimate response to why I don't want that development, whatever it might be, coming into my neighborhood. That might be legitimate because I've worked hard, particularly if I'm an African American. I have worked hard to get this piece of the American dream, and I don't want anything coming into my neighborhood that's going to lower my property value. As you well know, home ownership is the way that most Americans get on the path to creating wealth. It's certainly true for African Americans. So if there were a project, I'm just playing devil's advocate, coming into my community that would run the risk of reducing my property value, I might be opposed to that as well. I thought I heard you say, though, that narrative is a myth. That's a misnomer. If I heard you correctly, then unpack that a bit more for me, if you will.
Yeah, Tavis, you're exactly right. And in fact, I mean, I'll share a personal story with you. I live in a new housing development. I live in the District of Columbia. which used to be Chocolate City, no longer is.
No longer is.
No longer is.
Gentrifying like crazy, but I digress. Go ahead.
It is indeed. And the community that I live in, it's a new development. So my house is 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I've made friends with lots of people in the community. And one evening, some friends, some neighbors, and I had gotten together for dinner, and the subject of a new affordable housing complex came up because the District of Columbia wanted to place a multifamily affordable housing facility right in the middle of our community, our newly developed community.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in the group except for me was opposed to the development. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For the reason that we just talked about.
Yeah.
They said it's going to bring down our property values. I have worked hard. I'm out here, to quote Prince, working up a black sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And you trying to bring my property values down.
For the record, as this audience probably already suspects, given how close friends we were, anybody quoting Prince on my program is okay by me. So you just got brownie points, Lisa, just quoting Prince. But go ahead.
So Tavis, I have a sidebar story to tell you about that. But yeah, and so because of my profession and because we study this all the time, I was able to share with my neighbors that actually is not the case. This affordable housing development will not bring down the property values in our neighborhood. And of course, I was right. The development went forward. Tavis, my house I bought 5 years ago has appreciated at almost a value that is 50% higher than what I bought it for 5 years ago. I mean, the value of our homes has appreciated well above the national average. And so, but this sort of myth has been perpetuated down through history, and I'm sorry to say it is a racist concept. It's a racist construct. Because it is the argument that predominantly white communities used to oppose the building of affordable housing so that black people would be able to move into diverse communities, right? But that narrative has stuck. And we haven't been able to really promote accurate narratives to be able to educate people and make them aware that, no, your property value won't go down if you allow an affordable housing development to come into your community.
Maybe the question I should ask, and trust me, I'm going to give you 2 seconds to tell your Prince story in a moment. Let me do this first, and I want to hear your Prince story. So we'll do that, I promise. But maybe the question I should ask is how we define what you mean when you say affordable housing. Because, again, to your point, that narrative has stuck for a long time, that if you are a single home owner and you allow an affordable housing project to come in your neighborhood, it's going to decrease your property value. You just arrested that lie with the story you told about what happened in your neighborhood. So we know that not to be true. And yet the narrative persists, and people are scared of allowing any sort of development that has affordable housing attached to it coming into their neighborhood. So maybe the question is, what do we mean when we say affordable housing? Maybe they don't know what they are afraid of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people think when they hear affordable housing, they think of, Cabrini Green and those kinds of conventional housing. We used to call them the projects back in the day, right? I think that's what people think about, and that's not what we're talking about, because that old construct has really been ripped asunder. We don't build affordable housing like that anymore. In fact, what we build is multi-income housing. So we build housing developments so that you've got a couple of units available for very low-income people. You've got other units for moderate-income people. You've got units for middle-income people, and then units for high-income people. So the income is mixed. The income is mixed. And that's really the best strategy, Tavis, because when you concentrate poverty you're concentrating a lack of opportunity. You're concentrating, right, the devoid or the disinvestment of a particular community, which is not what we want to see.
Yeah. No, I get that stratified nature, and I'm going out here on a limb right now. But I would assume if we believe the narrative, the notion, and I do, that when you know better, you do better. If we believe the notion that if you can see it, you can believe it, and if you can believe it, you can achieve it. All these sort of affirmations that we pass around all the time. If we truly believe those things, it would seem to me that if you have an affordable housing project where there is this sort of financial stratification, you got low, you got middle, you got high income, but all in this particular in this same area, living together, I would think that those people on the bottom rung, but afforded the opportunity to live in this community, can see better, and ultimately they will do better. It ain't like they gonna bring the other folk down; they're gonna come up. Am I right or wrong about that?
You're absolutely right about that. And so can I also say, too, that this whole notion that we're talking, it's like NIMBYism, if you will.
Sure.
It's a manifestation of colonization.
Before you go forward, I like to make sure we're all on the same page. It's a great word, NIMBYism. I think most in this audience understand what you mean, but NIMBY stands for not in my backyard. Continue, Lisa Rice.
Yeah, not in my backyard. It's a racist construct. It really is a manifestation of colonialization in the United States, and this myth that people in the United States who have wealth got it by their own hard work and sweat equity. That's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie, right? You know, people who immigrated to the United States from European nations in the late 1700s and the 1600s, 1700s, et cetera, they didn't come here and purchase land and amass land and have the ability to build homes and to build farms and estates doing all of that hard work themselves. That's not how it happened, right? If you go back to the colonial period, the British government had a military situated here, right, in the British colonies. That military was waging war against native populations and commandeering their land and then giving it to the European settlers. So it's not those settlers weren't coming over here and just getting land that was free for the taking. No, the land was being commandeered. It was being taken over through violence by a state-funded entity, namely the military. Roads and bridges were built by the military. Whole swaths of land was cleared and developed by slaves, free labor. Right. So people got tons of support in order to amass that land and amass that wealth. And then when you come closer to more recent history, our federal government enacted policies that supported home ownership opportunities for white consumers or white residents in the United States, while denying those same opportunities for Black, Latino, Native American, and other people of color in the United States. So Black folks, Latino folks, they're paying taxes. Our taxes were being used to support home ownership for our white brothers and sisters, while we ourselves were not able to access those opportunities. Right? The GI Bill is a great example of that.
Sure. No, I love this backstory. I didn't know it was going to get this deep, but I love this backstory. Here we are talking in this hour with Lisa Rice, President and CEO of the National for Housing Alliance, about whether or not housing ought to be a right in this country, whether housing will ever be a right in this country. But in the interim, what do we do about the increasing houselessness and homelessness of people oftentimes who look just like you and me. And what about housing discrimination? What is to be done about that all these years later in the richest nation in the history of the world? So a lot more to unpack when we continue our conversation with Lisa Rice. I haven't even gotten yet to the houselessness part of this or homelessness part of this. We haven't gotten to discrimination. We got back in 1968, we passed the Fair Housing Act, and we made some progress. But when you look around today at the conundrum that so many people are in because they cannot afford a home, they can't afford a house. It's a conversation that could not be more propitious, and I'm delighted to have it in this hour on this day with Lisa Rice. When we come forward, before we jump back into the conversation about housing, I'm going to hear her Prince story. I love hearing Prince stories. Everybody's got one. So we'll hear Lisa's Prince story when we come forward and jump from there. You are listening to Lisa Rice on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest. 12 more hostages have been released by Hamas as part of an extended ceasefire deal with Israel. Yesterday's swap came after a temporary pause in fighting was extended an additional 2 days. In exchange, 30 additional Palestinian detainees were released from Israeli prisons. In New York City, jury selection is expected to start today in Manhattan in the domestic violence trial of Jonathan Majors. The African-American actor who has starred in several films faces accusations he harassed and assaulted his ex-girlfriend, Grace Jabari. This was allegedly during an argument in a vehicle in Chinatown back in March. Majors denies the allegations and has filed his own complaint against his ex. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Nearly 3,000 teen drivers die in car crashes each year. Tire Rack Street Survival is designed to save lives. The one-day hands-on driving school gives teens experience in car control through exercises that include emergency braking and skid recovery. Find a class near you at TireRack.com/survive.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
After only 6 games, freshman Juju Watkins has broken a school record for USC's women's basketball team. The Watts product scored 30 points Tuesday night in USC's win over Cal Poly. It was Watkins' 4th game of 30 points or more, breaking the freshman mark of 3 games with 30 or more, held by USC legends Lisa Leslie and Paula McGee. USC is 6-0 and ranked 6th in the country. A very interesting night tonight for the Lakers and Clippers. Can both teams bounce back after demoralizing losses on Monday? The Lakers are at Detroit, a team with a 14-game losing streak. The Clippers are 2 games under 500 and are 4-7 since trading for James Harden. A tough back-to-back is coming up for the Clippers. They're at Sacramento tonight, at Golden State on Thursday. We'll see if the Clippers are familiar with something called mental toughness. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Sponsored by Boost Infinite.
Hey, it's Amanda, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A nugget trays is that they're so easy for the holidays. They're warm and flavorful. It's always a crowd pleaser. When I put down a nugget tray, everyone is happy.
Hey, this is Brian, and the little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A nugget trays is the joy that it brings to me and everybody around me during the holidays. They're warm, juicy, and delicious.
Cater the holidays with Chick-fil-A today. Available on the Chick-fil-A app. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Discover, this is Danny.
Hi, it's Jen Coolidge. I just want to thank you for making me feel so special. I earned cash back on debit for my dinner party groceries.
That's great. But with Discover Cashback Debit, we give everyone cash back on everyday purchases. Anything else I can help you with?
Are you hungry? 'Cause everyone left after the asparagus sorbet.
Introducing Discover Cashback Debit, a checking account with cash back. It pays to Discover. Eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
In association with KBLA Talk 1580, the Terry Claiborne Foundation presents its 26th annual holiday party, Saturday, December 9th, featuring live entertainment, celebrity appearances, plus food and drinks. There is a cover charge for this party of the season, but not if you're one of our special guests. All you have to do is go to our website at KBLA1580.com and sign up. That's it, that's all. Just sign up at KBLA1580.com and you could win entrance to the soiree of the season. But whether you win or not, get a ticket, support the kids, and come join us on the red carpet in your semi-formal club attire and celebrate the season with KBLA Talk 1580 and the Terry Claiborne Foundation as we collect toys for the youth in our community. That's Saturday, December 9th, 1110 South La Cienega Boulevard, just south of Olympic. It's a holiday party with a purpose.
I'm Terry Claiborne. It's going to be a party. Come hang out with us.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now. Right now.
This will be the day you will hear me say that I will never run away. I am here for you. Love is meant for two. Now tell me what you're gonna do. If I gave you diamonds and pearls, would you be a happy boy or a girl? If I could, I would give you the world. All I can do is just offer you my love.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you tuned in to our program today and in this hour especially. So I'll let Lisa Rice, I told Miles, my board op, ask Lisa what Prince song she wants to come back with. And that's what we'll play. Everybody's got their favorites. Hard to pick one, but this is the one that Lisa chose as a setup to tell the story, her Prince story. Everybody's got one. Here we are talking about housing discrimination. In the middle of that, she drops a Prince reference, and she says, and by the way, I got a story about that. So, Lisa, while we let Prince ride, you tell us your Prince story, and we'll get back to fair housing in America.
Oh, Tavis, I love it. I'm loving it. And really, my Prince story is about you.
Oh, wow. Okay, I
It
didn't see that coming. Go ahead.
You didn't see that coming, did you?
I did not.
So, Tavis, I don't know if you even remember this, but you and I met over 20 years ago. We did a country, across the country tour with Nationwide Insurance Company, educating communities of color about financial opportunities and business opportunities. And you actually used to tell the story about how you encountered lending discrimination. So that's how you and I first met. So I knew way back then how much you loved Prince, and I did too, okay?
Funny.
So my Prince story was way about you. That was over 20 years ago. I was like 19. I don't know how old you were.
As my big mama used to say, we're going to leave that lay where the good Lord done flung it. We're going to leave that right where it is. We're going to leave it lay where the good Lord done flung it. But, you know, I'm
and I'm actually exaggerating. I was not 19, but.
Yeah, I knew that part, too. I'm laughing only because, again, in the conversation about housing, you never know. That's why I love black people. I just love black people, and ain't nothing they can do about it. You talk about one thing, and you connect to something else, and you get reminded of a story that you'd forgotten about, and somebody you met 20-plus years ago traveling the country. I remember this nationwide tour. I was honored to be a part of it. Again, talking to people about all of these issues that matter, and I'm kind of smiling, and I say this with humility. But every one of us, I say this all the time, Lisa. All we know is what we're giving. We never know what people are receiving, and every one of us, whether we admit it or not, we all want to be acknowledged. We want to be respected. We want to be loved, and we want to be affirmed. I believe those things are part of the human condition. I mean, you have somebody come on your show and they remind you of something you did 20 years ago when you were trying to love and serve your own people. In this project with Nationwide, it lets you know that you've tried to do something right in your life. You tried to help somebody along the way, and that you and I were connected in that project just brings joy to my heart and a smile on my face to know that you and I were doing it then. And we're continuing to do it now. I'm doing it as best I can, sitting in this seat every day, trying to empower, enlighten, and encourage our audience. And you are doing it as the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. So it's just a beautiful, full circle story. And the fact that Prince is at the epicenter of it is a beautiful thing. So I'm glad you shared that. And I'm glad we got a chance to play your song. So Diamond and Pearls, that's your thing, right?
That's my thing.
Okay.
That is my thing.
Okay.
And I forgot your favorite Prince song because they used to play it sometimes when you would come out.
You know, I remember that now. Now that you remind me. So yeah, they played a number of Prince songs when I would come out. And my favorite changes by the week. I mean, I have so many. I haven't been stuck with one for years. For a long time. I was stuck on "Baby I'm a Star" for years, and people sleep on that track because you have to hear the words. You might not know it now, but baby, I'm a star. And for all the years that I was on the come up, that was my song. You might not know it now, but baby, I'm a star, and I'm working my way there. And so for a long time, that was my theme song. But there's so many. I mean, obviously, I love Diamonds and Pearls, but when I'm talking about, we're talking about Prince ballads. For me, you can't do better than Adore. I mean,
I was just getting ready to say
you can't do better than that. Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, Diamonds and Pearls. It's an amazing track. And again, Prince and I would have these conversations all the time, and laugh and giggle. But for an artist, you know, they don't have a favorite. I mean, everything they do. I mean, you ask an artist, any artist, their favorite is the next thing they working on. That's their favorite. the one they're working on now, that's about to drop. But I think if Prince were here, and he understood that, of all of his ballads, he knew full well that Adore was the track that everybody adored, and so he wouldn't be offended by that. Trust and believe. So I'm glad we had that Prince moment.
I know that's the truth. Adore is my wake-up song. I wake up to Adore every morning.
Wow. Every morning, that's your song?
Mm-hmm. That's my song.
Okay.
It's between that and Diamonds and Pearls.
Okay. Well, there are worse ways to wake up, and there are certainly a lot lesser tracks to wake up to. So I'm thrilled to know that. Now let me pivot back to where we were. Now we've taken that Prince adulation break. Let me get back to what we were talking about, and that is this notion of fair housing and why it's not fair, frankly. I don't even know why we call it fair housing, because it ain't fair, certainly for people who look like you and me. But there are a few things I want to interrogate. Now I got to move more swiftly. We've taken 5 minutes talking about Prince. I got to jump ahead now to cover things that we haven't gotten to. What do you say first, Lisa, about the ongoing segregated nature of housing in this country? I was talking to a guest the other day from Chicago, and we're heard in Chicago on WVON, and they know in Chicago, and anybody been in Chicago knows. If you've been there, you know this. Chicago is an amazing city, a great city, one of my favorite cities, and yet it is still one of the most segregated cities in America, and Chicago ain't the only one. How is it that after passing the Fair Housing Act of 1968, housing in this country is still so segregated?
I'm glad you asked me that question, Tavis. So what we often forget is that throughout the entire history of the nation, we have passed literally thousands of race-based, race-conscious laws that provided opportunities for whites and those laws were designed to deny opportunities for blacks and other people of color. We talked about the Homestead Acts, the Homeowners Loan Corporation Act, the Federal Housing Act, the National Highway Act, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Jim Crow laws, the exclusionary zoning ordinances, urban renewal. So we have passed literally thousands of laws at the federal, local, and state level that not only were designed to deny opportunities to people of color, but were designed to foment and create and foster segregation. Right. So we created, segregation is not a natural construct. It is design. We are segregated by design.
That's right.
We are more segregated today than we were 100 years ago. So all of these laws and policies that we put in place over the centuries, they've created what we call systems of inequality. And those systems of inequality are still with us today. And those systems of inequality are still perpetuating discriminatory and disparate outcomes. And residential segregation is one of them. That's why I say all the time, Tavis, where you live matters, because segregation is a bedrock of inequity across the United States. So if you give me your address, Tavis, I can basically predict everything about you. I can predict your wealth. I can predict whether you're a home. I can tell you your credit score. I can tell you your level of education. I can tell you your chances of being incarcerated. I can tell you how long you're going to live.
All based on your zip code.
On your address, because place is inextricably linked to opportunity.
When we come forward with Lisa Rice, I want to ask her, given what she just laid out so brilliantly and so eloquently, we can talk about black home ownership and what she makes of it. A Fair Housing Act passed in 1968. What's her assessment of black home ownership all these years later? And why is it that black people, every time I look up, I see some other news story about somebody black whose house got underappraised, and then they whitened it, and it got upgraded. Why does that persist? We're talking with Lisa Rice, President and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance, on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton. And I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Don't settle for bumps, ingrowns, and itch due to dry skin. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is here with the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area, featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and skincare regimen that is dermatologist and gynecologist tested. Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about our full regimen of products.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean. Of course I use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to clean tough messes off my stovetop and bathtub. But then I discovered I can also use it to easily clean my patio furniture and even my shoes. I'm hooked.
And when wipes won't cut it, I use Magic Eraser Sheets. They're thin and flexible erasers, perfect for everyday messes, like gunk on my counters and sinks. They really are magical.
The reviews are in. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and Sheets make cleaning look easy.
She's so smooth, so... I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
So we passed the Fair Housing Act in 1968. I'm afraid to ask this question, Lisa Rice, but I'm watching my time trying to do things quickly now here. I'm afraid to ask, but what is your assessment of black home ownership all these years after the passing of that act, that historic act in 1968?
Well, Tavis, I actually have good news for you there.
Woo,
because
okay.
we're working on a lot of equitable policies and programs to help support black homeownership. So you're absolutely right. The black homeownership rate has been falling since the Great Recession. But because of equity-based provisions we've been able to put in place under the Biden-Harris administration, we have seen for the first time the black homeownership rate increase. So the black homeownership rate has been increasing since 2020. And that's a positive thing. And again, it's because of the equity-based provisions put in place by the Biden-Harris administration. Now, the bad news is if we don't continue the implementation of these equity-based provisions, special purpose credit programs, things like that, first-generation down payment programs, not first-time home buyer programs. First-time home buyer programs exacerbate racial inequality. First-generation home buyer programs will close the racial homeownership gap. But if we're not able to continue with these kinds of programs, then we will see a widening of the racial homeownership gap.
I'm glad to hear that good news. Good news doesn't come often enough this way by black people, that is. So I celebrate any good news we can get. But should it really take all that? I mean, I'm glad these programs are working, but what does it say about our nation? I'm not naive in asking this. What does it say about our nation that it takes all of that, Lisa, to get an uptick in black home ownership?
Yeah, Tavis, it takes that and more. So think of it this way. All of our systems and structures are inequitable. Every system and structure, even our technologies that are used in the housing and finance space, credit scoring systems, automated underwriting systems, risk-based pricing systems, they all generate bias. So you have to have these equitable provisions that can mitigate against that system that is inherently biased. You got to have a way to circumvent these bias systems. So that's why these kinds of programs are necessary, and we need more than that. We need to generate 5 million net new black homeowners in order to close the homeownership gap. We're only going to do that with these equity-based provisions.
Speaking of inherent bias, when we come forward in our remaining moments with Lisa Rice, I want to get her take. And again, we see these stories all the time. It's like they're perennial, right? Every day you look up, there's some new story about some black homeowner or homeowners whose houses were underappraised until they de-blackenized their home. And then the value goes through the roof. Again, anybody naive around here or stuck on stupid, but that just seems so outrageous in 2023. I digress. More with Lisa Rice when we come forward.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, on low Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah, breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Lisa, I've enjoyed this immensely. I've got 2 minutes left, and I've got 2 questions, so you got 60 seconds for each. The first is, speaking of inherent bias, why are black folks still getting played on these appraisals?
The appraisal system is inherently biased, and that's why we're working with government entities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the Department of Housing and Urban Development to change and overhaul the appraisal system so that it is fair for homeowners of color. That's just the sad state of affairs, Tavis.
Yeah. And finally, when you do work, the kind of work that you do every day as the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance, how do you process, how do you navigate every day knowing that increasingly across this country in big cities and small towns, black folk are the face of the unhoused?
Tavis, look, when we fight, we win. So that's why I do what I do. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in. My parents were civil rights activists. I had a cousin who was assassinated. He was a youth organizer for Dr. King, my mother's first cousin. I fight because I stand on the shoulders of people like him and others who fought so that we could have the opportunities that we have. So I'm fighting so the next generation can have more opportunities than I had. And we have to have that mindset.
Nope, you are right.
And people need to know when we fight, we win. Tavis, we bring civil rights lawsuits all of the time, and we haven't lost a case. When we fight, we win, but we got to make sure we're doing high-quality work.
That's the phrase of the day. When we fight, we win, but we have to do high-quality work, and that's true not just for Lisa Rice, but for every one of us listening right now. When we fight, we win, but we cannot escape our calling to do high-quality work, and she is. She's the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. She is Lisa Rice. Lisa, I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. Thank you for the Prince moment, and you have a great rest of the day.
Have I. Thank you, Tavis.
Happy holidays to you, Lisa. All the best to you.
Happy holidays to you too. Be blessed.
When we come forward, the brother who runs the LA Times, that's high cotton as we say around here. His name is Kevin Merida. You'll hear from him for the hour in a moment on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike.